Hey, it's Phil Meyer. Let's talk about Dancer on controller. I know most of you probably weren't expecting Dancer to be my next layout video, and frankly neither was I, but the rhythm got me and I felt compelled to keep the beat, so here we are. Dancer is an agile and straightforward support job. With damage buffs, healing actions, and a party-wide shield, Dancer can be an unassuming and valuable asset to any party. I want all of you to be the smoothest dancers on the floor, so we'll focus on optimizing core global cooldown abilities on the face buttons to better maintain character movement as you work through your attack rotation. Like all my previous DPS layouts, I split Dancer's core actions into 2 cross hotbar sets for both comfort and efficiency. The first is for single target attacks, and the second is for area attacks. I quickly swap between these 2 sets by tapping the right shoulder button. Check out my general controller setup guide if you need a primer on that. I'll include a link in the description. Let's walk through the ability placements, then I'll give you a demo of the layout in action. Dancer's global cooldown attacks take the phase buttons with supporting off-global actions on the D-pad clusters. This makes it feel more natural to weave off-global skills in between primary attacks. Starting with the single target set, Dancer's basic attacks take spots on the right trigger. These are Cascade, Fountain, Reverse Cascade, and Fountain Fall. On the AoE set, they're swapped out 1-to-1 for Windmill, Blade Shower, Rising Windmill, and Blood Shower. You can of course place these actions in whatever pattern works best for you. If you're playing with an Xbox controller, each face button color matches an ability color, and you may prefer lining those up. My preference is to keep the 2 most basic attacks on the left and top face buttons with the proccable actions on the bottom and right. I find this arrangement most comfortable. Head graze and leg graze take the top and bottom D-pad buttons, just like my Bard layout for muscle memory. Fan Dance takes the left D-pad button on the single target set, and this gets swapped out for Fan Dance 2, the area attack equivalent on the AoE set. Fan Dances 1 and 2, along with the basic attacks, are the only actions in Dancer's kit that differ between the single target and AoE hotbar sets, which makes Dancer easier to understand and get into than many other jobs. Fan Dance 3 takes the last D-pad button on this trigger. Much of Dancer's time will be spent weaving these fan attacks between basic attacks, which is why they're kept together on one trigger. Over on the left trigger is where I place Dancer's step actions. Standard Step and Technical Step take 2 of the face buttons. Using either one of these actions will cause your Dancer to do what they do best: dance. The basic attacks on the right trigger will change into dance moves, which need to be hit in the correct sequence before completing the dance with the originating button. Keeping the step actions on the base hotbar helps with both starting and ending dances. Kick off the dance on the left, perform steps on the right, then finish the dance back on the left. I've placed Saber Dance, another global cooldown attack, on the bottom face button, since by level 100 it's used fairly frequently. I'll elaborate further on this choice in a bit. On Avant, Dancer's Gap Closer takes the right face button. Regular viewers of my layout videos will recognize this as the button I always try to use for gap closers, for the sake of quick reaction time and muscle memory. The left trigger's D-pad contains more of Dancer's off-global abilities: Closed Position on top and Improvisation on the bottom. Closed Position requires a friendly target, most often another DPS player from your party, which would most frequently be selected using the D-pad, so assigning it to one of those buttons just makes sense. Improvisation requires that a dancer stay still during its use, so placing it on a face button wouldn't offer any advantage. This location works well and keeps the button accessible for Improvisation's follow-up action, Improvised Finish. Flourish and Fan Dance 4 take the last 2 D-pad slots. These are used less frequently than Fan Dances 1 through 3, which is why I chose to place them on the same trigger as the step actions. Because they use the left and right buttons, just like the Fan Dances on the right trigger, I can get into a groove weaving in left and right D-pad buttons between basic attacks. Let's move up to the double cross hotbar's left trigger. Foot Graze takes its spot on the left D-pad button, matching its position in my Bard layout. Foot Graze is really only helpful in specific situations, which is why it gets this slot. Second Wind and Curing Waltz take 2 of the face buttons here, allowing for maintained mobility whenever Dancer performs either one of these 2 healing actions. Shield Samba, a party-wide defensive action, takes the bottom button, matching the placement I use for similar actions in my other job layouts. Keeping this grouped with the healing actions allows them to be used together during more critical moments. Devilment takes the last face button on this trigger, again matching the location I use for similar abilities in my other layouts. Its long recast time relegates it to the double cross hotbar. After use, it changes into Starfall Dance, a global cooldown line attack with splash damage, which also benefits from being on a face button. On the right trigger's D-pad, we find Arm's Length, which shouldn't be a surprise for those of you familiar with my layouts. It takes this spot for consistency with my other layouts and because other abilities have higher priority. Last Dance takes the left face button on this trigger. It's a global cooldown attack that only becomes enabled after first completing Dancer's standard step combo. Now I think Last Dance's position here is interchangeable with Saber Dance's location on the base hotbar below. Since it only enables after first completing a standard step, I know at least one of you will be wondering why it's not placed right next to it. One reason is that Saber Dance can actually be used just a little more frequently than Last Dance, so I've given it priority. On top of that, Technical Step's post-finishing move, Talana, also increases Dancer's Esprit gauge, which is what powers Saber Dance. All this is to say that it's not uncommon to use Saber Dance in between Technical Finish and Talana in order to optimize use of the Esprit gauge, so keeping those actions in the same cluster makes that smoother to do. That's the main reason I chose to keep Saber Dance on the base hotbar, which pushes Last Dance to this location. The last three face buttons have duplicate copies of Dancer's off-global actions, Flourish, Fan Dance 4, and Fan Dance 3. Since these spots were still free, I chose to place them here so they can be more easily weaved in while Dancer is already moving, which helps keep their cooldowns and charges rolling during dungeon pulls. I consider duplicating these actions here to be a small optimization and not a requirement. I'd encourage you to experiment and customize these to your own preferences. On one half of the extended cross hotbars where I put less frequently used but still important combat actions. Limit Break, Focus Targeting, and Target Lock-On take their usual spots, which should be familiar if you've seen my other recent videos. Peloton gets the last face button here just like my Bard layout, letting it be used to speed up the party while already moving. L3 is where I put Sprint by way of Macro 98, and Assist Targeting goes on R3 via Macro 99. These are common across all my job layouts. Check out my General Controller Framework video if you need a primer on the how and why of setting those up. So that's my Dancer layout, built to feel familiar and to keep your hands moving smoothly with comfort and efficiency. Now let's get into the demo so you can see the layout in action. As always, the goal here is to show the general flow of the layout and not to maximize damage output. If this video helped you, a thumbs up on your way out is always appreciated. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.